Hey there, Eli here with another Atlas video for you. This one maybe takes a different tact than ones I've seen others post up. I'm going to break this down into two sections. The first section, I'm going to go through the strategy, just telling you what to do to make the Atlas work in your favor and to get to all 16 Watchstones so that you can fight Cirrus. In the following section, I'm going to break down and answer some questions, show a little bit behind the scenes as to why the strategy works, for those of you that are interested in learning about it. Let's get started with the rule that is in effect this entire time. That rule is if you find a map that has an incomplete notifier under bonus objective, like you can see here, I want you to complete that map as you find it. So, step one, you've just started your Atlas. You have maybe a couple maps from the campaign, maybe one or two, maybe zero, but you definitely get a map from Kirok himself, who also sells other tier 1 maps. What you're going to do is you're going to run these maps, prioritizing running a tier 3 map. Once you get a tier 3 map, you unlock Xana for that particular region. Once you kill the map boss, Xana will show up, take you into a portal to look at the Citadel, unlock the Citadel, and you're good to go. From here on out, you can fight Conquerors in that region, and you will see that as you run more maps in that zone. Your first task is to kill all of the Conquerors in each region, but let's say, for example, the first Conqueror you run into is in Haywork Hamlet. Once the Conqueror shows up, which should be Baron as your first, you'll run 3 more maps in the Haywork Hamlet region. Let's say you do this and you get his Watchstone. I want you to put that Watchstone immediately into Haywork Hamlet. Once you do this, I want you to ignore maps in Haywork Hamlet unless they are maps that you haven't completed the bonus objective for yet. Now your objective is to go around to the other 3 zones, unlocking citadels and killing the Conquerors there. Each time you kill a Conqueror, I want you to stash that Watchstone. So by the end of it, what your stash over here is going to look like is going to be something like this. Nope, like this. The important part being you'll have 1 stone from each zone. Now this whole process is going to take you a little bit of time, especially when you take extra time to complete maps for their bonus objective that you otherwise aren't particularly interested in doing right at that moment when it comes to spawning the Conquerors. During this process, I want you to pay attention to Xana's purchase items list here. She's going to have maps in her stockpile that if you hold Alt and mouse over, you can see whether you've completed them or not. It's very important that you have picked up as many chance orbs as you can during the campaign because she sells all of these lower tier maps and some of the higher tier maps for a combination of chance orbs and alchemy orbs. But right now, at the very beginning, it's going to be all chance orbs. So pick up those orbs while you're leveling. It'll make this whole process painless. Now you might notice Xana doesn't have an infinite stockpile of a bunch of random maps. Keep in mind that while you are running around getting the other 3 Watchstones, your first set of 4 Watchstones, at the end of each map, notice if you've been given a mission for Xana. That's what this little white number is here. While you're completing the low tier maps, you'll get white tier missions. What you would do here, if you're in a situation where you are maybe running a little low on maps or you want to just find another map that you haven't completed yet, increase your odds of getting more non-completed maps, what you do is you would take your highest tier map that you have that isn't in Haywork Hamlet and put it in your map device and then click this button here. This will force a Xana mission into your map, so this will benefit you twofold. First, in the map, you'll find Xana, who will give you a selection of maps to run. You can complete bonus objectives from those maps, so try to find one that will allow you to do so. Remember, white tier maps require you to have magic rarity. Yellow tier maps need to be rare rarity or have an alchemy orb put on them, and red tier maps need to be rare and be veiled, so corrupted. Now that's bonus number 1. Bonus number 2 is that once you do that, once those portals open up for the map that you forced a Xana mission into, you can now go back to Xana, go to purchase items, and a new list of maps will show up in her inventory. I want you to repeat this cycle as you see fit. Once you've completed this and you have your 3 watchstones here and your 1 watchstone socketed in Haywork Hamlet, you should have a decent amount of 1 watchstone tier, as in tier 4, 5, up through to tier 9 maps in Haywork Hamlet. You're more likely to have in the range of tier 4 through 7. And when you mouse over your Citadel for Haywork Hamlet, you'll see that 3 of these, all of the not red ones, will be not obtained and require 1 watchstone to trigger. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pick an adjacent zone, either Valdo's Rest or Glenitch Cairns, and we're going to put 2 watchstones into that section. I picked Glenitch Cairns, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll put those here, and we're good to go. Right now, I want you to run all of your maps in Haywork Hamlet until you have gotten the other 3 watchstones. Now keep in mind here, during this process of fighting Haywork Hamlet maps, if you find maps you haven't completed the bonus objective for in the 3 other zones that are lower tier, go ahead and run those. Go ahead and run all of them. You want to complete as many bonus objectives as you can during this process. And there we go. Now that we have our 3 watchstones from Haywork Hamlet, we have all of these obtained. We're now moving on to our Glenitch Cairns maps, which we have built up a stockpile of. Now, once we've completed all 3 of the other fights for Glenitch Cairns, we'll have 3 additional watchstones available to us. What we're going to do is repeat the process that we did before. We're going to take these 3 watchstones and we are going to set them up over in Lyra Arthane. And we're going to start running maps primarily in Lyra Arthane to fight the Conquerors there. And what we can do once we get watchstones as they drop, we can socket them into our 1 socket zones to raise our awakening level a little bit higher. Then we'll rinse and repeat until we have killed all 3 of our Conquerors in this zone here. And once we've accomplished that, we'll go ahead and put our final stones into Valdo's Rest, raising it to 4 watchstones. Once you do this, you will have filled out your watchstone list so that you have available to you to make your entire Atlas tier 14 through 16, which gives you in turn awakening level 8. All right, welcome to the breakdown for the behind the scenes, kind of a little bit more in-depth detail about what's going on with the Atlas during the Leapfrog strategy. Notice I'm sitting up, I'm jazzed up, I love this stuff, so let's dig into it. So, why does this work? Why, you know what, first let's tackle bonus objectives. Bonus objectives are so important, so important. So, when you hold Alt, you can see we have Atlas map, bonus objective, awakening objective. The most important one of these is bonus objective, followed closely by the awakening objective, but awakening objective is more like frosting on the cake. Bonus objective is the cake. Why is that? Every time you complete a bonus objective, you increase this by 1.5% now in 3.16 in Scourge League. Every map that you complete increases your odds that the next map that you drop and every subsequent map will be 1 tier higher. This goes up to 100% once you reach 100% bonus. Every map that drops a tier higher. Notice how it says right there, completed bonus objectives in white, maps drop at least 1 tier higher. This is amazing. And then as you go above 100%, as you can see, 30.5% chance for maps to drop 2 tiers higher. That should be obvious in how crazy good it is. So that's why we pick and choose to get all of our objective bonuses as soon as we see them in almost all situations. I didn't say that caveat during the other part of the video because 99% of the time during that strategy, you will not hurt yourself by running a map that you have not completed the objective bonus for. It's almost always going to be good. Now, let's look at a real example here as to how this works and why it's almost always good for you. Let's say we're right at the start, we have 1 watchstone in Haywork and we have 2 watchstones in Glenitch Cairns. So now the Atlas itself, if you aren't aware, is a living rule set. That means whatever maps are showing physically here on the Atlas is what the game uses to determine what maps are available to drop for you as the player. For example, under this current rule set, you are not going to have, assuming, you know, we're just at the start, right? You don't have anything really completed. That rule set will not drop a tier 7 Caldera, okay? Caldera is a tier 7 Valdo's Rest map. Under this current rule set, that map doesn't exist for you to drop. If a tier 7 is going to drop, you know where it's going to drop? It's going to drop either tier 8 is the lowest tier in Glendish Cairns, so tier 7 is going to drop in Haywark Hamlet. This is really important because this is the basis upon which the suggestion of complete all the maps you find that you have access to while you're building up your map pool and doing the Leapfrog strategy. That's why this works, because any map that you find isn't going to be a high enough tier to trigger a conqueror in the wrong place. So once you're in this scenario, you've gotten your first 4 Watchstones. To trigger more conquerors, you need 1 Watchstone in an area. So if you drop a map in Valdo's Rest or Lyra Arthane that you haven't completed yet, or you get one from Xana, you can go ahead and complete that without risking spawning a conqueror. Same rule goes for Glendish Cairns. These are 1 Watchstone conquerors in this current setup. Once you've beaten the first 4 conquerors, and this is where you are right here, that's the next step. If you drop a lower tier Glendish Cairns, you can go ahead and complete that without risking triggering a conqueror in Glendish Cairns, because it requires 1 Watchstone and the map tier has to correspond with a 1 Watchstone tier. That didn't come out as clear as I really wanted it to, so put another way, the tier of the map has to match the Watchstone level as well. So for example, let's take Tropical Island. At 1 Watchstone, this is a tier 6. At 0 Watchstone, this is a tier 3. If you complete a tier 3 Tropical Island map and get the objective bonus for it, you have then also completed the objective bonus for Tropical Island at tier 6. It is for Tropical Island, right? So if you have 1 Watchstone required to spawn a conqueror, which you can see by hovering over the Citadel, or you can see by hovering over here. If you have 1 Watchstone required to spawn and you get a tier 3 Tropical Island map, you can run that tier 3 Tropical Island to get the objective bonus without risking spawning a conqueror. So that's why this works for progressing your objective bonus while also continuing your Leapfrog strategy simultaneously. As a failsafe, when you put a map into the map device, it should say, if you're trying to complete a lower tier 1 while you're doing this and you're not sure, it will say this map tier is too low for the Conqueror track to spawn. So the next thing I want to talk about is the Awakening level. For every 2 Watchstones that you socket into the Atlas anywhere, you get an Awakening level. And as far as leveling up and getting to Awakening level 8 for the first time, the most important modifier here is the second from the top, the % chance for an additional connected map to drop from Unique Map Boss. That's where these connected lines come into play. So a connected map for Lighthouse is going to be Foundry, Coliseum, Moon Temple, and Museum. And this is important because this is an additional chance not only for an extra map to drop, but also for an adjacent map in the zone that you are going to progress to next to drop for free. Now, in addition to all of this, we do still have the Awakening bonus objective, and if you mouse over maps on your Atlas, you'll see what you need to do to complete that. All it has to do is complete, for this example, a tier 14 version of the Grave Trough at Awakening level 3. So your Awakening level has to be 3, has to be a tier 14 Grave Trough, and it doesn't have to satisfy any other metric. It doesn't have to be rare and corrupted like the bonus objective. Now, if you haven't completed the bonus objective on one of these red tier maps, you can do a rare corrupted tier 15 at Awakening level 3 and you'll get both bonuses in one go. That is, of course, the ideal way to do it. The Awakening bonus is going to increase the effect of modifiers on your maps, which includes pack size and quantity. This should be immediately obvious as to why this is so important, because the more monsters and the denser packs, the more items that drop, the more maps that drop, the better your sustain. Typically speaking, in my experience, if you get to the point where you have a relatively high Awakening bonus, you probably have far more maps in your pool than you will ever know what to do with. Your sustain will be far overcompensating your RNG chances of getting maps to drop. So you essentially, if you have, let's say 50%, maybe 60% or higher awakening bonus on top of a really high objective bonus, you really can't lose in the map sustain game. And finally, the last thing I'll bring up is once you obtain your full set of 16 Watchstones, you can then start fighting Conquerors, and they will fill up this center part, which will lead you back to fighting Cirrus once all 4 have been killed, just like you might recall in past leagues. Same rules appear to apply. They have to be tier 14 and above, as in 4 Watchstones tier maps. So once you get to that point and you have all your Watchstones, in order to fight Cirrus, you'll need to do rounds of tier 14 plus maps in order to get the Conquerors and then kill Cirrus himself. Now, I suppose we should also talk about the Maven a little bit here, because there is a level of optimization that you can do with her. Maven is the blue bars for anyone who isn't aware, and as far as I know, I could be wrong on the exact tier, but last I knew it was tier 5s and above is where the Envoy started showing up, and we can show you that here. This is the Envoy. They'll start showing up. Be on the lookout for them, because you will get a Maven's Orb to put into your map device, and that is this little number here, this button here. You want to make sure this is on all the time. You always want the Maven to be witnessing your map fights. Now, you might not want her to be witnessing your Atziri fight, for example, so try to remember to turn that off if you're not interested in that. But for regular mapping, you do want to have this on, especially during the beginning of the league. You almost always want to have this activated so that the Maven is witnessing fights. And what this will do is, as she witnesses a fight, this blue bar will fill up. And so once you fill up that blue bar for the first set of 3, once you kill 3 different map bosses in an area, so 3 Haywork Hamlet map bosses that are unique to each other, so you can't do the three same ones in a row. Once she witnesses those 3 fights, the final boss that you kill will drop a green set item, a Maven's Invitation for that area, and you put that into your map device, go fight those 3 bosses, and then you get your passive points for this area, which is very powerful. Of course, these Atlas passives are very strong and incredibly beneficial. There are further optimizations that you can do, like with Valdo's Rest. You can do Ominous Arrival for additional Harbingers and Powerful Harbinger Boss. You can level those as you're doing Valdo's Rest. Maybe you don't start with Haywork Hamlet, or you position your map in such a way, your Atlas in such a way, that you are completing these Maven fights to get additional passive bonuses to help you fill out the Atlas. I personally didn't go to that level of optimization. You're going to naturally complete the Maven fights as you go along, as long as you aren't somehow doing the exact same map over and over, which RNG dictates wouldn't happen. So I wouldn't stress too much about the Maven. The passive points are very important, and once you complete getting your 16 Watchstones, you can go back and you can focus fire on getting the passive points that you want. That's a totally viable and legitimate strategy to go through, and it's pretty painless because you can focus on one thing, getting your Atlas to Awakening level 8, and then go back and catch up the Maven the rest of the way. And one more note on the Maven, as you can see here, I need 6 boss battles. These correspond kind of like how Watchstone tiers raise the map tiers. You don't need to, if you have 4 Watchstones in here and only 6 boss battles on the Maven, these are 2 separate requirements. So the Maven isn't going to require a tier 14 through 16 map in order to get more points in this blue bar. So for example, with, let's say, Valdo's Rest, if I have 6 boss fights, then that is equivalent to needing 3 Watchstones, and 3 Watchstones goes up to tier 13. Even if I have 4 Watchstones in here on the map, it's tier 14s, but let's take a tier 13 Valdo's Rest and put that in. As you can see, the Maven still wants to see that. So these are 2 separate systems that are looking at 2 different things. So make sure you pay attention to that when you are going back and leveling up the Maven, or starting to level up the Maven, whenever you're doing that. One final thing before we end the video, I want to let everyone know that Karv does have a new video out on a method of progressing through the Atlas that he found very smooth and very nice for this league. As far as I know, he doesn't have a name for it. I would call it the slam and go, because that's essentially what you do with each of the Watchstones. I'll have a link for it in the video description down below, so you can go and check that out. There are pros and cons to each method. Probably more pros than cons to the slam and go versus the leapfrogging. Leapfrogging can be a little bit complicated, and while it has a lot of benefits for those who really want to min-max and get to the top tier content as soon as possible, it does take a little bit of planning, it does take a little bit of forethought, and hopefully the first part of this video helped those of you who aren't really interested in digging into the details and just wanted to have a framework from which to play through. Go and check out Karv's video as well. The end goal of this is not to have necessarily the right way to do it. It's to educate people on how to play the game, how to understand what's happening in the game, so that you don't really have to worry about it or get stressed out about it. I've known plenty of players and heard from many people who have reached out about just how complex the Atlas appears to be and how it feels for casual, returning, and even veteran players. And, you know, a lot of people don't put in the time to really figure out what's going on. They just play the game, and that's what they want to do. They just want to play Path of Exile. They don't want to become an Atlas master. And that is perfectly fine and normal, I would say. So hopefully between this video, between Karv's video, at the end of the day, and I think I can speak for Karv here, we just want you to have a better understanding of how to play or feel confident playing, and so you can have more fun at the end of the day. That's the point. That's the point, is to have more fun. That's it for this video. I hope it helped you out. I hope you learned something. If you want to help me out, hit like and subscribe. That tells YouTube that I am important and special, have something to say, and it will help me out, make me feel good. If you have any questions on what I've talked about here, any things you need clarification on, leave a comment, join my Discord, and send me a message there, or message me on Twitter. That's all linked below in the video description. Until next time, this is Eli, signing off.